chào đón quý vị và hiện tại ngay lúc này chúng tôi đang có mặt tại cửa hàng Hifi Store và bên cạnh Thu Hà lúc này đang là sự hiện diện từ anh Hoàng Việt là đại diện từ phía Hifi Store, cũng là đại lý chính thức của thương hiệu Nordost tại thị trường Việt Nam ạ. Đồng thời Thu Hà cũng xin được trân trọng giới thiệu ngày hôm nay có sự ghé thăm của một khách mời vô cùng đặc biệt, đó chính là ông Bjorn, là đại diện từ phía thương hiệu Nordost ngày hôm nay đã cùng có mặt tại Hifi Store. I would like to introduce Mr. Bjorn, representative from Nordost. Today he has the morning at Hifi Store. So the first, Mr. Bjorn, let's introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, as you say, my name is Bjorn. Yeah. And I work for Nordost, and I have been doing so for the last 18 years. And what I do is that I travel around the world and work with system setups, explaining and having seminars about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. So I'm part of a very fantastic group of what we call the export team. So we are a group of people that do the same, and my pleasure is to deal with Vietnam, and I've been dealing with Vietnam since 2008, I think, or maybe 2009, somewhere in that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thưa quý vị, như vậy thì ông Bjorn cũng chia sẻ là với những công việc như là set up về những cái thiết bị về hệ thống này, cũng như là có những cái trải nghiệm và sự training về những cái thiết bị của chúng ta, thì ông ấy ngày hôm nay cũng rất là vinh dự khi mà có mặt ở đây. Và phải nói rằng là ở thị trường Việt Nam thì ông cũng có mặt từ năm 2009 thưa quý vị. Còn bây giờ thì mình sẽ cùng với anh Hoàng Việt cũng như là ông Bjorn tiến lên phía trên, bởi vì ngày hôm nay thì tại cửa hàng Hifi Store ở bên dưới của chúng ta là khu vực trưng bày rất nhiều sản phẩm từ thương hiệu Nordost cũng như là nhiều thương hiệu khác nữa. Còn phía trên lầu chính là khu vực mà set up âm thanh, mình sẽ cùng trải nghiệm âm thanh ở trên lầu quý vị nhé. And now I would like to invite you and also that Mr. Hoàng Việt come to upstairs to enjoy the music, and after that please help us make the sound better.
Oh yeah,
okay.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, let's go.
Never seen the system before, so thank you.
Xin được giới thiệu đến quý vị cũng như là ông Bjorn, đây chính là khu vực phòng nghe vừa mới được hoàn thiện của Hifi Store với đầy đủ các thiết bị, và ngày hôm nay thì ông Bjorn sẽ cùng trải nghiệm và có được những cái ý kiến chân thực nhất, cũng như là sẽ giúp cân chỉnh âm thanh được hoàn hảo hơn ạ. Mr. Bjorn is the new listening room, and we just finished it yesterday. How did you feel about this?
Looks fantastic.
Yes.
Absolutely fabulous. It has a very nice and welcoming atmosphere to it, and also good sound.
Yes.
I can tell already before the sound is coming that there will be good sound.
Yes, and let's have a look around the room, and then we will enjoy the music.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. My pleasure. It doesn't do anything bad. You know, there is nothing wrong, like harshness or anything that is coming out and just is annoying. Yeah. So, very nice presentation. Now, it's very hard to just jump into a situation and say, do this, and
yes,
it will automatically become better. There are, for sure, things that I could experiment with, but the presentation as it is now is very comfortable. So it doesn't harm you. It doesn't do anything bad at all. And when you have that as a starting point, you will reach areas where you do things wrong. You know, sometimes when you do pretty much every time when you do a setup, you have to stretch things to, okay, that is wrong. Now I need to go back to understand what is right. And you are really, this is a very, very pleasant presentation. So in order for me to do something that makes a significant improvement, I need to experiment and stretch and reach the borders of not good to understand, and that's going to take time in order to do that. I think you have managed to hit a situation here where it's I could personally live with this, to go and sit and enjoy music. When I picked a couple of tracks here, I picked a couple of tracks that are, if they're not really good, the Alison Balsam trumpet that is supposed to be, off to the right instead of to the left, which is perfectly well demonstrated. So precision, check. The track with Sade can be quite muffled, but she is just having a nice hovering presentation in the center. And the Roger Waters is actually having a lot of off-axis and almost surround sounds to it. And it's to me, the surround sound there were dramatic. It's just 2 channels, and I could swear that I heard the horses over there and there. Yeah, and also the thing, when you told me that this was finished just yesterday, just to give you an example, when we do shows, like big shows, what I try to do is that I go in and make a setup 2, hopefully 3 days, but at least 2 days before the show, and I don't listen at all. I just set the system up,
yes,
connect everything, and let it run. And then the next day, that's when we do critical listening and positioning of and reorganization of the system, because it takes quite some time for all these components to cook together and to become friends and work in the way that they are a team, so to say. So considering that it was finished just yesterday, and what we already have here, I really would feel challenged to do anything and say that this is going to be better. That's and looking at the layout, I have only positive remarks here, because you've taken care of everything. You have made a really nice layout with the cabling, the power cord separated from the interconnect, separated from the speaker cables. Everything is on sort cones. You have really been listening to our preachers, to our preaching. It really does impress. The only thing that I could say that I know would be an improvement is a Q core for the monoblocks. To add a Q core for monoblocks, because that makes them act as one. Oh. That really completes the whole idea with stereo is to have two to act as one. So it gives you the illusion of one. But that, again, if you don't have the connections, what can you do?
You see the marble stone?
Yep.
There's the white one.
Yeah.
If I remove this one, if I remove both of the speaker,
yeah.
So what is the difference? What is the difference with the sound, with the if the speaker stay on the carpet and without the stone?
Yeah.
Quality.
Yeah, it's very hard to say. The reason for using the same one slab of the same material is that in this case, 4 connection points, they will have identical circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have 4 identical circumstances. Whereas if I don't have a slab, I may have 4 individually different circumstances. I don't know, this is probably a concrete floor underneath.
Concrete floor.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a piece of carpet and concrete, and you don't know how good the concrete is, because it could be porous under one foot and very hard and solid under another foot. So the reason for using one slabs or one piece of the same material is to eliminate that. It doesn't necessarily have to be better. It is a way of eliminating unknown variables. So in order to be sure, you have to try it with or without. It will be a long answer because this is the first, to my knowledge, the first switch that has been designed from the scratch with an audiophile perspective. A few years ago, we saw audiophile switches popping up in the market, and what they did was that they had a couple of things in common. They use off-the-shelf solution, like a TP-Link or Netgear or anything standard. And then you do either a good power supply or you introduce an oscillator. And then we had a couple of them having both, a good power supply and a good oscillator. So that on its own is good because we know a good power supply is making a lot of improvements. An oscillator is also good. But the big problem with an oscillator being introduced later in the design process is that there is no room for the oscillator on the motherboard. So it has to be supplied on a daughter board, a separate circuitry board. And you connect that with poor wiring. So you kind of defeat all that precision that you have invested in your oscillator by implementing bad wires in between. So that inspired us to really look into how can it be, because these switches do work. They do make a much better sound experience or sonic improvement. So we started to look into using our expertise in understanding what is noise, where does it come from, and how do we get rid of it. And another thing that we quite soon realized was that these panels that an off-the-shelf switch is coming from, you got connectors very tight side by side. They are very noisy. There is a lot of interference between those connectors. So our QNet, which is the first round switch you've seen probably, but this distinct design is actually derived from a very simple design feature. Separate the connectors so you keep them apart from each other. It's just as simple as that. And we have our own motherboard, and we have that main IC is here. So we got equal traces, and we have separated the connectors from each other in one strike just by the design here. And speaking of motherboards, we have invested in the machinery to do our own circuitry boards, and our design is made completely in-house with audiophile purposes as a goal. We don't bother about the computer world's volume and speed. That's what they're chasing. The bandwidth that we use is very, very tiny compared to the computer industry. We have so much bandwidth that we only use maybe a tenth when you stream, if you stream like 8 times DSD. We have endless amounts of bandwidth at hand. So we don't need that. We don't need the computer speed, the computer bandwidth. We have so much more of that, more than we need. So what we're looking for is to eliminate noise and not allow that to be introduced into the signal. So we have separated the connectors. We have created our own circuitry board, which is a 6-layer construction. So we can separate ground from signal, from power on its own traces. And we have, speaking of power supplies, we have 6 linear power supplies in here, in the DC domain, so very tiny ones. But for every single component that requires its own voltage, we have a dedicated linear DC power supply in here. And they eliminate noise just by default of their very construction. So that is indicating a product that is made for audio as opposed to made for computer and that world. The other thing that I obviously need to mention is there is a top and a bottom on this. Because we're using linear power supplies inside, they generate heat. So we have a couple of slits here that are for ventilation. And you shouldn't block the ventilation. So if you put it upside down, you will block the ventilation. And if you put it underneath something, you will block ventilation.
Yes.
So you should be careful with positioning it so top up and leave space for ventilation. This port is the power port. The QNet is a plug-and-play solution, so what is in the box can set you off. You can use it. It's a small switch mode power supply wall wart to make it work. But since we do have an AC linear power supply, our Q source, I would strongly recommend you to use that power supply to power the QNet up, because that takes it to another level of performance. So, sorry for that lengthy explanation, but it needed to be said. I cannot emphasize that enough, that this is a product made from scratch for audiophile purposes, as opposed to anything else in the market, and especially computer switches. Leave those if you're serious about your streaming.
Thank you for your taking time today with us and have the training at the Hifi Store. And we wish you all the best, health, happiness, and success.
Oh, thank you so much. I am honored to have been invited to such a lovely place. Yeah. I really enjoy being here and to see you guys again. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Thưa quý vị, như vậy là ngày hôm nay chúng ta đã có được những cái trải nghiệm vô cùng chân thực tại Hifi Store cùng với thương hiệu Nordost với hai vị đại diện ngày hôm nay. Và Thu Hà cũng rất là cảm ơn quý vị ngày hôm nay đã cùng theo dõi chương trình cũng như là có được những thông tin vô cùng bổ ích. Hy vọng là qua đoạn video clip này thì quý vị cũng sẽ hiểu rõ hơn về cách mình sử dụng cũng như setup âm thanh ở nhà của mình quý vị nhé. Còn bây giờ thì xin chào và hẹn gặp lại ạ.
Bye bye.